on, guys? Michael J. Rudolph, also known as Movie Mike here, and today we're going to talk about what you need to get started as a hybrid shooter. Yeah, what is a hybrid shooter? So, a hybrid shooter is somebody who shoots both photo and video. In this ever evolving market, you're going to have to really decide which path you want to go on. I've done both for the last 10 years, and I could honestly say that I have no problem dividing myself up into both of those categories because you could really make some extra income by diversifying what you shoot. So, in other words, you could be a portrait photographer, and then you could also be like a music video shooter. You know, you could direct music videos. So that's just some career paths that you can take. Obviously, there's the amount of things that you could do is endless once you speak the language and you understand things like composition, lighting, and the appropriate settings to use on your whatever camera you're using. So today, aside of me wanting you to become the best hybrid shooter you can be, I want to break down some of the gear that I use and what you could do to get started doing the same thing. So let's talk about my camera. So first, for the last 5 years or so, I've been using a Canon 5D Mark IV for photos and video. And I have all Canon lenses. I have the EF lenses. And the DSLR revolution, it might be ending, but that's not to say that those cameras are not of great quality. So if you get something in that lane, that brand, Canon, they have cameras like the 5D Mark II, which pretty much revolutionized digital filmmaking when it came out. That's what really started this revolution we had, where everybody was buying DSLRs to make films and stuff. And I thought it was beautiful, man. I didn't get one of those cameras early on. My first actual camera that I started filming with was a Canon 7D. And let me tell you, man, if you had a 7D back then, you were that guy. You were that guy everywhere you went. And even more so if you had a 5D Mark II. So I would definitely say, I'm not biased against anything. That I'm not loyal to Canon because that's not even what I shoot on anymore. I just wanted to let you know what I started with. What I shoot on is a Fujifilm X-T4. And I've been buying some lenses to go with it. But for the most part, I use this Metabones adapter, and it allows me to use my Canon lenses on the Fujifilm. No, I wouldn't recommend doing that because there is some downfalls to doing that. Sometimes my Canon or my camera will click off or it'll start blinking and stuff. So it's if you have to be on point and you have to get the shot, and you can't rely on your gear like that. You gotta have something that's really reliable. So I would say get the Fujifilm X-T4 body, but get all of the X mount glass that comes with it, because those are beautifully sharp lenses, and I promise you it's gonna level up your shooting. So just to go through what I have though, I have the X-T4, and I have a 16 millimeter 1.4, and guys, it's beautiful. I'm not a math guy. I think it equates to something like 24 millimeters on a crop, but it is a beautiful image. You could get real close to subjects, and it's not in that distortion range because it's not a full frame sensor. So, I definitely recommend that. And also, for the Fujifilm line, there's this lens. It's a kit lens. I believe it's a 16 to 55 or something like that. It's a 2.8. That's the lens to start off with right there, man. Usually it comes with the model if you get the kit. But yeah, get that, and that'll get you shooting shallow, depth of field, and also you get to zoom in and reap some of the benefits of having a close-up shot, man. Like you can't beat a good close-up, man. So that lens right there kind of covers all of that range. Aside of that, the lenses that I do use from Canon, the EF mount ones, I use an 85 1.8, and that is no, it's actually a 1.4. It's a 1.4, and it is beautiful, man. That is my go-to. If I'm doing an event, if I'm going in blind and I don't really know what I'm getting into, you best believe I have an 85 on me and this other lens, the 28 millimeter. So those two lenses on a full frame body are really all you need. Some people might argue, like, I don't want to switch lenses, I want to put a zoom lens on. And that's all good and dandy, man, but you really can't beat a good prime lens. It allows you to get so much light into that sensor. And when you have a Canon, if you have a camera like a Canon 5D Mark III or Mark IV, and you're allowed to boost your ISO up to like 3200, man, there's not much you can't do. Shoot at 1.4, wide open, let all that light in there, and next thing you know it, your shit looks cinematic. So there's that. Those are the lenses I use. So what I would recommend for lighting is get some cheap lights for starters. I have a clamp light over here. I'm lighting myself with a clamp light, and it's just feathered out of frame. So it's not really directly hitting me. I'll show you what it looked like if it was directly hitting me. See, like, I'm completely blown out. That's not really a usable image. But when you turn it away from you a little bit, kind of, like that, suddenly you have like a feathered image, and it looks way more flattering. And then in the background here, if you just look back here, I got this blue light. This right here is the Aputure MC, and this comes in handy for pretty much any on-the-run shot or shooting that you're doing. It's great. You can mount it to your camera, or you could just, you could Hollywood it right off outside of frame. There's so useful to have these. Just get a couple of these, really, and you could use them for accent lights. And, I'll tell you, man, this has a little softbox on it. I've actually used this as a key light before. I wouldn't recommend it because it's not a big light source. It tends to be a little bit more hard of a source. But in a pinch, get a couple of these, you could do a nice 3-point lighting setup. So I'm going to just stick this back here. And by the way, this is face down, because if I had it aimed at the wall, again, we would have hot spots, and we don't want hot spots. What we want is nice, pleasing accents. So I cover it up, I hide it back there. It's just kind of hitting the wall, gives you a little bit of separation. What else do you need, man? So lighting. This is what I'm going to recommend. This is what I have. I have a Godox SL60W. The W stands for white, the temperature of the light. They also make Y, which is like a tungsten, so yellow, I guess it would be. But I have, what do I have? I have 3 of those, and then I have a tungsten one of those, so an SL60W or Y. And then I have a Godox SL150. And when I got that light, I thought I was at the top of the game, man. You put a softbox on there, and suddenly you could start diffusing and shaping light the way you never could before. And I tell you, the more you go up in your wattage, it just like it makes you think. It makes you think that, how did I ever live without this, man? We're up to an Aputure 600D at this point, and that's still not enough power for us. We want something that's extra bright, man. Because then you could control it. You could put like a nice thick diffusion over it, and then you could put like a nice, a crate over it, or whatever you call it, a grid, and suddenly you can modify it. If you have to knock down some of the intensity, you can put screens up. So like whatever you need, the highest amount is ideal. But when you don't have the budget for that, and I understand you're just starting out, you need to make money to spend money. You got to get these things that are, a little on the cheaper side. Yeah, they say the SL60W has a little bit of noise in its fan. But I'll tell you what, man, if you're shooting music videos, if you're shooting anything that doesn't involve great audio, that's the light to get, man. And when the audio does matter, get yourself an SL150. That's plenty of light. If you don't want to stay in the Godox brand, Aputure makes phenomenal products, man. So I'll recommend a few. I got the Aputure 300 Mark II, and ever since I got that, it's leveled up my lighting. And when I talk about being a hybrid shooter, this is also boiling all of your instruments down into one thing so that you could really do your job as efficient as possible. And when you have an Aputure 300D, suddenly you don't need a strobe anymore. You could actually shoot continuous light, do your photos and video. So once you get the higher wattage lights, that light runs for I think it's just over $1,000, but it's worth it, man. It'll pay for itself just after a couple of videos once you get yourself going, man. But I talked about the SL150. I talked about the 300D. My buddy Johans, he has the 600D. Our next light, we want to get the 1200D, and then maybe a couple more of the 300Ds, and then we're gonna be set for life.com, man. So gear, that pretty much covers lighting. The gear I would get, you don't necessarily need expensive stabilizers. You could get the GlideCam 2000 HD, which is a phenomenal stabilizer for a couple $100. You don't have to spend the $600 on the Ronin right now, man. Just to get started, just learn how to use your camera in handheld mode. Get really good at moving to the beat of your heart, or if it's music, move it to the tempo, move it to the music, man. But you don't have to have anything besides that just starting out. If you're making like music videos, if you want to do interviews and corporate stuff, you're going to need a very reliable tripod. And this is an understatement. Please get yourself an expensive tripod. And I'm talking, tripods, you could spend at least a couple grand on those for a really good one. But if you spend a couple $100 on a nice fluid head tripod, you will thank yourself for it, man. I promise you will sleep better at night with a good tripod. And the tripod is the foundation of both photography and video. Because when you put it on the tripod, suddenly you don't have the vibrations that you once had. And you could really control your image, especially if you have, one that goes into landscape and portrait mode. Not all tripods come like that. So what I would recommend is get a video tripod and a photo tripod. And the brand that you want to go with is Manfrotto. Yes, it has Frodo in the name. So just remember that. It's a red and white logo. Get some of those products. You could find those at Best Buy. Some cheap, maybe $100 tripods there. For your more expensive stuff, you're gonna want to go on eBay, Amazon, B&H Photo. That's where you're really gonna get your value for the tripod. And I recommend getting something used. You could find really high quality tripods on B&H for couple $100 used, man. And that's really where it's at. So we talked about what camera to get. We talked about the lenses. We talked about the lighting. and then we talked about how to stabilize your camera. What we didn't talk about is what you're going to edit this video with. And I recommend using Adobe Premiere. So you get the subscription. You know somebody else who's making movies, taking photos, team up with them. Say, hey man, I'll split this subscription with you, and that way it kind of cuts the overhead down a little bit, allows you to breathe, think about creativity instead of financial, stress. So get yourself Adobe Premiere, get yourself Adobe Photoshop, get yourself Adobe Lightroom. Between those 3 applications right there, that's all you need to get started. Finally, the one thing we didn't talk about, and it's the most important, and you could see that I didn't really stress my video composition, my lighting, and my quality, because the most important thing aside of the aesthetic is actually the sound. And the sound that I go with when I'm using mics for video is, let's say we're doing stuff in the field and we need decent audio. I'm using a Rode Mic Pro. That's a shotgun mic. The one I bought, it was almost $300. Well worth it, but Rode has more inexpensive mics that you could get. You could spend up to like $80 on a mic, get yourself some decent quality. I'm telling you, man, if you don't have good audio, they're not listening. They're going to cut you right off. So get yourself a good mic. If you're doing interviews, you're going to want to do a couple of mic sources. You're going to want, lavaliers, they call it, the little lapel that hooks to your shirt. You hide it. You tuck it into your pocket. You run it down the shirt. You tuck it into the pocket. Hit record, man. You got to put the mic in a good position right there on the center of the chest. You could hide it under the clothes. Use a little sticky pad to stick it on them. Get them really sweet levels. And then you also use your shotgun mic in addition, because when you're a professional, man, you got to have multiple ways of getting it done. If your camera fails, you got to have a backup camera. If your mic fails, you got to have a backup microphone. Your tripod fails, guess what? You need a backup tripod. Everything you do is going to represent your brand. And if your brand isn't on point, if you show up and if you miss that first kiss, if you miss when this guy, nails this awesome moment in the music video, if you miss any kind of moment, it's going to come down on you. It's going to come down on your image, man. You got to get it right from the start. So those are my top tips on how to get started as a hybrid shooter. If you enjoyed this, if you found any value in it, please smash that like button. Give me a favor and just subscribe to me, man. I'm on the road to 1,000 subscribers. Once I get that, man, I'm going to pursue this as a full-time hobby. But until then, I'm just trying to have fun with this, man. No expectations. Listen, I'm Movie Mike, also known as Michael J. Rudolph. You could call me either one. I hope you guys stay blessed. And if you're still listening, you know what, man? Come watch the next video. We're going to have a good time. You guys have a good one.